Hey friends, hope you're doing fine. Today I'd like to discuss with you an issue which might arise when you pivot your data in Power BI and how to handle it. So let's get into that. At first, I need to import some data and I prepared here a little Excel file. So let me click on Excel Workbook and then choose here the file I was referring to. I click on Open and then let's just connect and let's have a look what this data looks like. So it's a simple table. And here with this structure, let's take a look, which simply contains our three columns, which is an ID column. And we have information about a student, class, and a score. And then we have some information here. Now, the interesting point is Larry here as a student, because he has two scores, which are in here. While the others, Tom and Jane in here, only have one class and one score. So obviously Larry is doing class 102, but he had to rewrite the test because one exam he failed, obviously. So let's go to transform data and let's have a look what the issue is and how we can solve it. Now, I can see my table here, and if I want to pivot a column like column number 1, it's essential that I have here also this ID. So this column needs to be there, otherwise I can't pivot the data the way I want it. That's the first thing we need to keep in mind. The second is that here, the student, that is the column I want to pivot. That's why I need to select the column first before I go under transform and then use pivot column, right? First need to select the column, then you click on pivot column. Now, if you pivot the column, then this means that these values inside the column become new column headers, right? So we have one for student, one for class, and one for score. And the only thing we need to define then is what do we want as the values inside those new columns, which is in our case, column number 2. So let's select it as I've done, then click on pivot column. And then here we just specify the value column, which in our case is column number 2, because as I said, column number 2 contains the values we want to see then in the columns student, class, and score, which we will create using pivot. So one additional thing is the advanced options here. What do we want to do? So how do we want to work with the values? Do we want to count them? Or what other options we have? We don't aggregate the data? That would be possible. So if we do this, and that's the point which I was referring to. If we say aggregate value, don't aggregate here, because here are the options, and we click OK, then we see that we end up with an error here. And the reason for this is simply because we have here a list. Remember, for Larry, if I go back one step in here, we had the issue that obviously the score in here, right? This score is, as you can see here, 95 and 70. So he had to take the same class twice. And this is why if we don't aggregate the data, as we specified here, we run into an error because we have two values now in here. And what is the issue, or how can we actually change this? What can we do? Well, we could say that the score itself here, this should be numeric, so we can change it to a text. Let's say this is a whole number. But you see that this still doesn't work for us, right? So, because sometimes people suggest, okay, I just need to change here, for instance, the value itself. So that does not work. So what else can we do? Let's go back to the pivoting option here. And let's try the following. Let's here convert this into a number. Let's take a look at that and let's see what that works. That also doesn't work. And then we could still try to pivot, right? Go in here and say, can we pivot the data now? Well, if I go to pivot option here, I can say advanced options. And now I would have some more options like this, for instance, right? For maximum, minimum, and so on. So this will work. So if I go maximum, click OK, then obviously, again, I get an issue regarding here the name. So that obviously also doesn't work. So what can we do? Let's go back in here. Now, I mean, what we could do here is simply go inside here and then say, okay, I'd like to actually, one more time, pivot the data. And I say for this one, I like to actually go in here and say maybe advanced options. And you can see that obviously now, oh, sorry, column number 2, that's what I want. I still have count non-blank, and don't aggregate. Now we could say I want to go count, click OK. And this obviously works, right? So we can see here, now we got a student, class, and so on. so that we got 1 or something like that here everywhere, right? So this obviously also does not work. But we see that list.distinct, and then there's a comma, and then there's list.count. So what if we change this and say instead of count, we want to have list.max, so the maximum. Now we can see that this would work. So this would give us here our students, the names, Tom, Jane, Larry. We can see the class they took, and we can see the score. In this case, for Larry, not 2, but the highest score. Of course, we could also use list.min, also as an aggregation type. That would also work. The point is that we need to have some kind of aggregation here, as we do now. But with lists, as you've seen, if you don't aggregate the data, you run into errors. So that's why changing the aggregation type here can be helpful in order to derive then a pivoted table which gives you some values you can work with. Okay? And beside this, you could simply go to Home then, click on Close and Apply, and load the data into Power BI, and then continue working with it. Okay? So that's it for this idea. So hopefully that was interesting to you. Maybe you have run in this error before. Of course, feel free to comment. And please don't forget to subscribe, as well as please like the video. Thanks a lot. Take care, and hopefully see you in the next one. Until then, best guys.